Good morning. Wonderful to be with you yet again. Today, we are moving into our scripture reflection day, which is Tuesdays. So, today's reflection on scripture is from Loida Sardinias Iglesias, and she is a priest in the Episcopal Diocese of Columbia. She works at Mission St. John the Evangelist, and she's also a professor of theology at, please forgive my pronunciation, Pontificia Universidad Javeriana in Bogota, with special interests in systematic theology, ecumenism, and ethics. Wonderful concentrations. It's a great depth of theology and study there. So, before we begin our scripture study and hear Loida's reflection, let us first pray.
Omnipotente Dios, cuyo bendito Hijo fue llevado por el Espíritu para ser tentado por Satanás, apresúrate a socorrer a los que somos atacados por múltiples tentaciones, y así, como tú conoces las flaquezas de cada uno de nosotros, haz que cada uno te halle poderoso para salvar. Por Jesucristo tu Hijo nuestro Señor, que vive y reina contigo y el Espíritu Santo, un solo Dios, ahora y por siempre. Amén.
Now for some scripture. Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. And that you may recognize as from Isaiah 58, 6 and 8. And here is Loida's reflection. Fasting is one of the Lenten practices that has motivated me since a very young age. My father fasted once a week on a day he dedicated to studying scripture. In the Bible, we find various reasons why people fast: as a religious ritual, Jeremiah 14, to seek God's help, Joel 2, or to find strength in the face of temptation, Matthew 4. We fast both as individuals and as the Episcopal Church so that we may face difficult situations, dedicate ourselves more completely to God, or seek God's will, as we know that we cannot depend on our own strength. Yet, we can distort this practice by turning it into mere ritual and by forgetting the sense of justice and care for our neighbor that should accompany our fasting. In this passage from chapter 58, the prophet Isaiah points out that we like to imagine we are doing good works by fasting when we are not. We fail to acknowledge God. We exclude and exploit others. Our fasting is mere grandstanding. The prophet invites us to practice a true form of fasting that is pleasing to God by doing justice, sharing our food, our home, and our clothing with those in need, and assisting the helpless. This is the kind of fasting that will bring us blessings and strength. Only by so doing will our cries for help be answered and God's glory accompany us. So, I love this reflection, particularly during Lent, when fasting is something that we think we should be doing. And maybe we should. There's nothing wrong with fasting so long as it is not going to negatively impact your health. And we talked before Lent began, if you made it to our Lenten study, on what is Lent, why do we do the things we do. We talked about different ways to fast, that it's not necessarily a total abstaining from all sustenance and food, but there are other ways to participate in a fast. Could be without eating meat, or simplifying your meals, or perhaps eating only simple bread and water, or rice and water, or something that will give sustenance, but not a lot of flavor and depth and excitement. So there are ways to fast and do it well. What I love from this reflection is that if we choose to fast, it shouldn't be fasting for the sake of fasting, or to check off a box, or to say, well, this is just what's done in Lent. It is intended to draw us closer to God so that we can then do this fast that God chooses. And that is what Loida is focusing on. Doing justice, sharing our food and our clothing, assisting the helpless, finding ways that we can practice fasting from our own abundance, perhaps, and sharing that abundance with others. Fasting does not have to be about food, though it can be. Perhaps you fast physically by not eating meat, and instead you share the meat that you otherwise would have eaten with someone who desperately needs protein and iron and everything, all of those nutrients that are within the meat you might have eaten otherwise. There are ways to be creative about these expressions of fasting and of Lent. And so I invite you, as Luida has, to think expansively about what fasting means, what it might mean for you in your life. And maybe that's one of the practices you want to try. Maybe that's on your list from Saturday and you'd like to give it a try. Maybe experience a different form of fasting, or maybe you've never fasted before and you want to see what it's like, see how it might draw you or not draw you to God, and whether it's something that you could explore further. Always, always good not to just write off spiritual practices without first attempting them or thinking expansively of them. So that is our task for today. Fasting, what it means, what it can do for us, and how we can think of it as Loida and Isaiah do. All right, that's enough for today. Plenty to think on. So I will see you again tomorrow.